What's going on, everyone? So we have a ton of James Harden and Sixers and Clipper news that has flooded our internet the last day and a half, 2 days. So let's dive into all of it because there's a lot. So James Harden trade rumors, 76er star increasingly likely to open season with Philadelphia. James Harden had this to say about the front office, which is referring to Daryl Morey, but only called him the front office. This is not even about this situation. This is in life. When you lose trust in someone, it's like a marriage. You lose trust in someone, you know what I mean? It's pretty simple. And James Harden trade rumors, 76ers Clippers remain engaged in talks ahead of the season. So James Harden is very likely going to play a good portion of this NBA season with the Sixers. Now, there were the reports, James Harden finally came to training camp. James Harden was locked in and had a great training camp and was fully embraced, and he was fully engaged and didn't look like a guy that was disruptive at all, because that was a real fear, right? That James Harden was going to make things as uncomfortable as possible, as awkward and just rough as possible. And no, he came in and he didn't. He was actually the total opposite, and he actually played with the team. And even Tyrese Maxey talked about it in an interview, right? But here's the thing. We got the news, and he only did that once. He went to one practice and was like, all right, I did my job. I am done. And there is this concern going around that the Sixers are wondering if James Harden is actually going to play. Now, he is expected to be there on opening night, but there is a concern that James Harden might say, you know what, we're going to take the night off. And that could be a real problem. Now, I don't believe that'll be the case, because James Harden is still very adamant about being traded. The Sixers are trying to trade James Harden. The Clippers are continuously trying to find ways to go and acquire James Harden. And we'll dive into the Clippers in here shortly. But as far as James Harden goes himself, right, he has to be a model citizen. Because if he's not a modeled citizen, then that is very bad, and it could scare away the Clippers. Right? Like, the Clippers are already on the fence about trading for him. The Clippers also are looking at it as like, we're the only team that is in position to bid for you. So we'd be bidding against ourselves, right? So if James Harden doesn't play team ball and the Clippers back out, now what does James Harden do? And that could affect him getting a new contract next year, right? So it is in his best interest to play nice, to play ball. Show up, do your job, play the game, right? That you're paid hundreds of millions of dollars to play. You're on a team that has a legit chance of coming out of the East and even potentially win an NBA championship, right? If the Sixers won the NBA championship, now I don't think it's likely, but if the Sixers won the NBA championship, would anyone really be that surprised? No. You'd be looking at it as they have the MVP, or the reigning MVP. They have James Harden, who, is an MVP. They have an excellent talent in Maxey. They have, some solid depth. They have more than enough to go potentially win an NBA championship. I mean, if him and Joel Embiid didn't just completely disappear when you needed them most, they might have won last year, right? But James Harden is this guy that just completely disappears at times. And, Philly's in this just tough spot, right? Because they want to win the championship. They want to be competitive. They want to do this. And James Harden, at any moment, he could just make things very difficult, right? And he's done it. That's the problem, right? He has a track record of it, right? So it's not something that would be surprising at all if we just saw James Harden decide hey, I'm just not going to play. Or if he does show up, does he just sabotage, right? Or do the bare minimum? We saw that with Houston. We're like, yeah, he showed up to the games, but he might as well not have. Because all he did was just hurt the team. And was just like carelessly turning the ball over and just taking ridiculous shots. And just like, he was just basically out there so he didn't get fined. He tried 0%. And there is that question that, like, what if he does that for the Sixers? Now, I don't think he will, because he kind of isn't in a position to do that, right? Like, the last thing he needs to do is, like, decrease his value any more than it already is. It's like, the problem is, like, look, what teams are lining up and looking at James Harden as that missing piece, right? Like, I wouldn't be shocked at all if James Harden ends up having to finish the season in Philly. I mean, like, right now it's the Clippers or bust. If the Clippers don't end up making a move for James Harden, who's going and signing up for James Harden? Like, what team is looking at James Harden going, yep, he's the missing piece? Especially with his track record, him being a free agent after this season, and him being absolutely notorious for just completely disappearing in the playoffs. Right? So you have so many things going against you for a guy that, like, he can still play. I mean, the dude led the league in assists last year. He's still very talented. He's not the James Harden he used to be. If this was 27-year-old James Harden, teams would be lining out the door. But it's not. Right? He's not the same guy he once was. He's became a huge headache. He's a liability on multiple fronts. Right? Like, it doesn't make sense for a team to go gut their roster to go get James Harden. And, you know, maybe at the trade deadline, maybe a team becomes interested in Harden, right? Like, maybe Harden requests a buyout or something. I don't know, right? But, like, I don't even know why the Clippers have this vested interest in James Harden, period. It just, to me, it doesn't make any sense. I don't think James Harden makes them better. Right? Like, you know, like, there are some teams that, like, sure, if they got James Harden, I think they'd be better. But, like, the Clippers, like, they have Russell Westbrook, who's been great in the sample size we got last year with them. Like, so much so, he literally had his most efficient stretch of his career. Right? Like, where does James Harden fit in that? Is Russ coming off the bench? Okay, fine. But you're still going to have stretches where James Harden and Russ are both on the court. And we saw how that worked. We saw how that looked. Wasn't that great? And it was a little awkward. And neither of the guys are the same guys that they were back in the Houston days. James Harden, he needs the ball in his hand. He needs to kind of be the point guard, right? So I guess it would make sense for him to kind of be the playmaker. But, like, so what now? He's the third, fourth option? Like, where does he fall in the pecking order? And is that something that he's even going to be okay with? Because he's had trouble adjusting to being the second option. Right? Like, how does that work? How does that look? And then on top of that, the Clippers have two stars that aren't even available come playoff time. And then now you're going to have a third star that, yeah, he's available, but he might as well not be. You'd probably be better off if he wasn't in the playoffs, right? Like, that just completely vanishes and disappears. I don't think, like, and if you're the Clippers, you're going to have to sell the farm to go get the assets to go and acquire James Harden. So, again, based on the reports, the Clippers are actively trying to find draft picks to go and put a package together to go get James Harden. So, basically, the Clippers originally offered something along the lines of, like, you know, a first round pick, a pick swap, you know, a couple, salaries like Marcus Morris and, Batum or Covington or whomever, right? Now, the Sixers, they want Terrence Mann based on the reports. The Clippers don't want to give up Terrence Mann. And the Clippers are looking at it as like, why do we have to give up so much when we're literally the only team bidding for James Harden? And James Harden has made it very clear that we're the only team that he wants to go to. So teams are probably not going to go trade for him because it doesn't make any sense because they're going to have to give up assets and he's just going to leave. Like, the Sixers aren't really in a position of demand, right? Because, yeah, could they play hardball and just keep James Harden? Sure, absolutely. But James Harden has a history of just quitting on a team. And if you're Philly, do you really want to play who has the bigger ego and run the risk of losing Joel Embiid? At least if you get a Morris, Covington, and like whomever else, right? At least those guys would want to play. You could put Maxey at the point, put Morris at the 2, Covington at the 3, you got Harris at the 4, and you got Embiid at the 5. Could be worse, right? I mean, at least you have guys that want to play. At least you have guys that'll show up, right? Like, rather than James Harden who's just going to quit on you. And but again, why would the Clippers even want it? That's the thing that I don't understand, right? I understand, like, I guess the sexiness of like, oh man, we have Russ, James Harden, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. Like, yeah, 5 years ago, you probably go undefeated, right? But like, this isn't that. Kawhi Leonard can't play more than like 5 games in a row. Paul George can't play more than like 7 in a row. Russell Westbrook, he's Mr. Reliable when it comes to, actually, making the games. But he's not the same. I mean, I think he gets a worse rep than he actually has. And I think people kind of, criticize him more than they need to. But he's still not the same guy he once was. And neither is James Harden. And you're going to put this like weird mixture of roster together. And I don't see it having success. I just don't. But the Clippers, for whatever reason, are still actively trying to find a way to land James Harden. And they probably will at some point, right? Especially come the trade deadline. You'll have teams that are looking to blow things up. You're going to have teams that are looking to, kind of shift course. So, I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass a question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? Do you think Harden ends up finishing the season with the Sixers? Do you think he eventually makes his way to the Clippers? How do you feel? Whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. Let me know down in the comments.